going to now welcome our chairperson of the board. As I mentioned earlier, matriculated at Alexander Sinton way back in 1977, went on to UCT, trade unionist, did much work there, also came alongside Nelson Mandela, did much work in his office there, and the rest is history. Ladies and gentlemen, chairman of the board, Marcel Golding.
It's very difficult to compete with Mark. I don't have any of the humor that Mark has. Certainly Sinton gave him a lot of humor. Didn't give me much. Let me start by saying it's very late for me to be out. Normally at this time I'm putting my kids to bed, so I am it's a very late night for me to be out talking. But no. Asked me to say a few words at the opening of this gallery or exhibition. And I don't think I'm necessarily qualified to say much, barring the fact that I do collect art and have been collecting art over the period. So having spoken to Suren and Tony, and looking at some of their work, I think it's exceptionally inspirational when one gets the story of what they were trying to convey. Not so long ago, I think archaeologists working in South Africa, maybe 10 or 15 decades ago, discovered some of the oldest artwork, extraordinary examples of humankind's earliest artistic endeavors, the rock art. Today, I think our country enjoys a very vibrant and often politicized contemporary art scene. South Africa's earliest known artistic tradition is over 100,000 years. These earliest works have a link to our contemporary art, as they show over time the evolution of our nation, the interpretation of events over the millennia. Cornerstone, since I've started getting involved, wishes to play a more important role in the art world and in the art community. And we are certainly trying over the next period, as we expand the organization, to collect art from our community, from artists, and build up a collection that we can show and keep for posterity, for students to understand the evolution, the development of our institution. I was talking to Omar, who I've probably known for Omar Butcher. Many of you probably know him. I've known Omar probably for over 20 years, maybe a bit longer. And I was just talking to him about saying the need for Cornerstone to collect work, to create an environment for our students to understand where they come from or what the history is. I mean, I remember going to UCT and really in our lecture halls, it was just bland. It's just a bland place. I would certainly not like Cornerstone to be a place where students just come into a bland room. I think they must be surrounded by their history, or certainly the history from where they come, so that they understand how things have evolved and how things have changed, and why today in a democratic South Africa they have a very unique opportunity to study in a society that has immense potential and opportunity. So I think the role that Cornerstone wants to play is to encourage and contribute to exhibit works of artists from our community and from other parts of the world. I think it's vital that we create an environment that promotes creativity, curiosity, and challenges our rigid views of the world, opening up our minds and hearts to a new way of seeing the world. I think the renowned American philosopher Henry Thoreau has put it, is not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. So through our art, we are able to capture moments, time, and experiences of our community, and the artist as a storyteller. Cornerstone as an institution if you see its history, is rooted in the community. Its provenance is over 48 years, tells its own story of working in trying to make South Africa a better place, educating and developing young men and women to play a constructive and meaningful role in our society. Today we see South Africa encumbered by its people and interests focused on much self-interest and self-service. The original goals that we set out in fighting for a better life and for a democracy for the majority of people seems to have been deferred in some ways. The dream of social justice and fairness somehow shattered. So I think in many ways we have destroyed the dreams of many young people with the lies and deceit that pervades the society, the self-serving conduct and the selfishness. And I hope that in Cornerstone's growth and work, that we begin to reinculcate the values that was generated with a group of people or generations of people that fought apartheid. Today, I think, with a democracy, there seems to have been the umbilical cord has sort of been cut from this long and important history of values and purpose that drove our conduct and drove our activities. And what I'd like Cornerstone to do, certainly not up to me, it's up to the entire generation of people that are working, trying to rebuild this organization, is to continue to play a role in reaching out to people, to young people who seek to bring about change and the fulfillment of the original ideas of our liberation movement. By making education more purposeful, by linking our education to work and community and service, by enhancing the values that make our society caring, by promoting social justice, and by enhancing creativity. Cornerstone is working with the artistic community through its partnerships with other organizations, including WEFT, which is the Wheatfield Estate Foundation Trust, in the support of exhibitions, in the purchase and support of facilities, and I think hopefully also in the creation of residencies for artists that will allow them to be at Cornerstone or at affiliated places of Cornerstone to promote additional work. Our international expansion program and collaboration can be seen with the exhibition of Tony Scott. Hopefully this will be the start of many, many such exhibitions. I think the exhibition, in talking to Tony, tells a very important story, and when I listened to her rendition of her own history in Bloodlines and what she tried to do, I think in many ways that same story that she's telling about her own history, both as an indigenous person as well as an African American, there's a similar stories that have to be told in South Africa. The same probably technique used to tell the South African story about how things have evolved, how things have changed, how things have not been fulfilled. In the same sense that Suren Pilay's photographs tells an interesting story about Cuba's changing environment and how people are adjusting, how people are changing, how buildings are changing, and how I suppose the transformation, whilst good in many respects, has to also preserve the history of the culture of the society. You know, the interesting thing about Bloodlines was listening to not only the installation had a multi sort of media effect. It had an interesting narration. It had music and it had photographs telling a very, very important story. And I think what Tony said to me, which stuck to me actually, because I feel that I myself have, I said maybe in the last few months, understood this for the first time, is that in the DNA of people, the suffering that may have existed over generations or decades are actually are transferred to you. And I never understood this actually before, but I did about 2-3 months ago. I think I don't know if the word is correct. it's a somatic intervention where the psychologists believe that trauma is embedded in the DNA in your cells. And unless you liberate, unless you deal with that, the ability to rid yourself of that sort of stress and trauma becomes exceptionally difficult. So it's not only in the psychology of the mind, it's the psychology in the physical condition that that needs to be liberated. I never understood this before. 3-4 months ago, in discussions with people, and I suppose undergoing my own little transformation, I began to understand that, and it involves actually going back in time and distilling a whole set of experiences that you may have had, that you need to unburden yourself with if you're ready to move on. Ironically, as I said, some of those things you don't actually want to talk about because they're A, too painful, they're too difficult, they're too complex. You just want to rather ignore it. And funny enough, the more I try to ignore them, the more it didn't solve the problem. So you have to actually deal with it, and you can forget about it after a while, but you actually have to deal with it by talking and challenging those experiences. So in the same way that Tony looks at slavery, I think we need to look at apartheid in the same depth and intensity. Not so much to keep on harping on it. I mean, when you talk to, sorry I have to say this, when you talk to whites, they always say, listen, forget about apartheid. Look, it's on. We're a democracy now, move on, like stop. But ironically, it's not as simple as that. Is that there are deep embedded wounds in a lot of people. Many of us can move on, but there are a lot of people that can't move on, and it's no use telling them to move on. You've actually got to deal with those deep psychological scars and things that are embedded in their DNA and in their mind and in their experiences to begin to have a true reconciliation, let's say, so to speak, and to then develop a democratic society. So all those pain and traumas are part of this transformation that we have to undergo. So I know exactly what I think Tony's talking about, and I think if people look at her installation, it's put quite well that even though the pictures may be grainy and unclear, it's in the eyes of the people that you can see either the pain or the trauma, or maybe the happiness or whatever. But the quality of the image is irrelevant. It's what you see in the eyes and what's conveyed there. So let me say that Cornerstone's contribution in being a more constructive sort of player or partner in the society is to bring the art and artistic endeavors more closely together, and that where we can sort of, be a showcase to the world for what's happening in the community. And I think Cornerstone has started this process already of bringing things or having more interventions and actions like these events. So let me say congratulate Noel and his team for hosting this thing. I think it's been fantastic. And I hope we've already discussed with Suren, maybe looking at some of his things, and maybe we can discuss with Tony, and maybe the start of building a collection of art for Cornerstone or its related institutions, that we can create an environment for our students where when they come in and they look at things, they see a different world. They see something more deeper than just coming to a class. Anyway, thanks very much for the invitation.